Thank you everyone for coming to the session, and hello. And as it was said, I will be focusing on systemics. Systemics is a science that deals with living systems. Living systems can be individual humans, it can be a human mind, and it can be a social system, such as a team or the whole organization. So this is our topic today, and I would like to start with something that will maybe explain itself in a moment. How do I... One more? Okay. It's not long. I think you get the idea. Okay, so what we saw right now is something that really exists. You saw metronomes that each started in a different way, but in the end, they ended up working the same way, in the same direction, with the same sense of purpose, we could even say. So to get us started with the speech itself, and the metronomes will get very clear later on, I would like to talk about systems. What are systems? And as I was listening to the speeches yesterday, I could see that some of the speakers have already touched the subject, you know, of systems and relationships. So this is, I hope, a good follow-up. So what you are looking at right now is a generic system. It can be any system, right? So such a system is composed of its elements, A, B, C, and D, and the relationships between such systems. Between such elements. Again, since it's a generic system, it can apply to a machine system or it can apply to a living system. It can be anything from a chair to a more complicated thing such as a car or a computer. I pointed here three important points that I would like to talk about a little bit to introduce the systems a little bit more. So the first one, it's like a statement. Basically, our universe and our world is composed of systems upon systems combined with each other. You know, in a family, you would have several team members, several family members. Each of them is basically a biological living system, right? These interact with each other. Family knows another family. They interact with each other. Children, as a living system, go to school, which is a social system. So if you try to look at the world through the system thinking lens or view, you can get to new discoveries. So the whole world and possibly universe is made of these systems, and they are basically affecting each other with forces, which would be these relationships. I don't know if it's working anyway. These relationships, okay, the lines. The next statement that I would like to start off with is that system is a number of individual elements connected with the relationships, just as I already said. And the third important thing to carry away from the very beginning is that the relationships between elements are also the boundaries of the system. So this can be a little confusing, so just very quickly, imagine that you have a team of 5 team members, okay? The interactions and relationships between these team members define what is the team. For example, the CEO of the company will most likely not be a member of a delivery team, right? So he's outside of the boundary. He doesn't have a clearly definable relationship to the rest of the system. So these are some very basic premises to understand what a system is. Okay, so we as humanity have basically came up with 2 major system theories or concepts of what a system can be. The first is the Newtonian, Newton. basically Newton's machine system. Such a system, if you look at this beautifully drawn diagram, you can see that there is a timeline, and this is the shape of the system. And if you look at the timeline, you can see that the shape of the system doesn't change in time. It stays the same. So if you have a car and you don't really crash it, or it doesn't corrode, it will pretty much stay the same. It doesn't have free will. It will simply be the system that was designed, such as IT architecture, processes in a company, like payment, salary, who responds to whom. So this is an example of a machine system. Again, a couple points to take away from the machine systems. Machine systems are fixed, rigid systems that really, as I said, cannot change on their own. They have to be affected from the outside. The next thing to remember is that, and this might be really similar or like familiar to many of us, if a part in a machine system, car, computer, anything, gets broken, you can take out the part, the individual element of the system, replace it, and the system will most likely work again. And again, the third part, the relationships between these elements in such a system are again fixed. You know, if you take an example of a chair from IKEA, you know, or something that you can like assemble by yourself, the chair will stay together, the car will stay together. It would have to, you would have to change the laws of nature, how, you know, the forces interact with each other. So basically the chair could reassemble itself into something else, for example, a sofa. So to take away from this slide is that machine systems really are quite passive entities. They can be designed, they can be constructed, but they cannot change themselves on their own, and usually replacing a part will do the job if it's broken. As compared to these, we have Luhmann's living system. Luhmann is another psychologist slash philosopher, and he came up with the theory of living systems. Systemics, as I said already, is a science dealing with living systems. It's not something that I just made up. It has been here for decades. It started maybe in the 50s or 60s of the last century, and of course, the psychological foundations for systemics have been there even since Carl Gustav Jung and in the 20s, or basically the beginning of the 20th century. So if you look at this diagram, day 1, nothing happens. Day 7, our living system, a living entity, a human, a social system, a dog, has this shape. A couple days later, actually 2 days later, it looks completely different. And I want to use like an example of situation that sometimes happen in families or between people. If you look at the day 7, let's assume that the element A, the red one, is the wife. The element C is the mother of the wife. Element B is the husband, and element D is the daughter, the child. Okay? So day 7, everything is perfectly fine. The family, you know, interacts as normal family. The relationships are somewhat stable. It's or equal. Then, in the day 8, in between these 2 days, something happened. A mistress called, and she called the wife and said, "Do you know that your husband is my boyfriend?" And of course, this changes things, right? If we had a machine system, the chair or the car would not care. But living system, that's completely different. So the next day after the confrontation, we can have a look at the new situation where basically the daughter system, element A, is telling to mother's element C, "I have been so stupid. I should have believed you, you know, I should have seen this from the beginning. He is very weird." And the mother is saying, yes, I told you that this is not a good husband, is all the trouble. The husband is at the very edge of civilization, right there in the corner. And the daughter, because she is 15 and she has a lot of trouble with herself, she's like, "Oh, my terrible family, they ruined my life." So you can now see that the relationships and the boundaries of such a living systems have completely changed, and all it needed was an input from the outside. You see, humans can break, humans can change, humans can be damaged. And because social systems, teams, whole organizations are made up of humans, to disregard or ignore this is actually very short-sighted. So, again, a couple points to take away. Living systems are systems that are alive, and as such, we do possess free will, a measure of free will that allows us to choose what we are going to do, how we are going to react to a certain stimulus or input. Because some of you are maybe team leaders, product owners, scrum masters. This is something that is good to just remember from time to time, because the organization is forcing us to believe that we are machine systems. We are really not. So it's the internal decision of the system that matters. Second, living systems do change in the course of time. I think that is well demonstrated. Even if somebody matures, you know, if you are going through a primary school for 6 years, you can see that your classmate who was in the 2nd grade, like, you know, I don't know, very silly and funny in the 9th grade, maybe he is very serious, maybe something serious happened to him. So living system change. And the third one is that living systems' nature, so what they are made of, actually allows them to change their attitude to each other. If we are, actually right now as we are speaking here, we all are one social system, and we have some relationships with each other. You know each other, you are listening to me, I'm talking to you, we have some established positions. And if I make really inappropriate jokes in the next 5 minutes, your attitude towards me will change drastically. And the same happened in our example with the family, right? Is everybody still following me? Like, does it make sense what I'm talking about? Okay, thank you. So let's move on. Organization as a system. We are getting to the more spicy bits. So this is the org chart. I believe that every single person in here has seen some sort of organizational chart. Organizational charts are very important papers. Usually they were designed by very smart people who basically said, if I draw it this way and the things happen this way, we will be very rich and very successful company. This is how it is. We have the CEO, we have probably the advisory board or the board of directors above him somehow, reporting lines, different departments. And if we can act like this as an organization, we will be successful. But this is a machine system. This is just a design. There is nothing human in this at this point. It is just an abstract idea. So the reality is actually something like this. I have tried to draw it in a way that it would be clear, like the lines of the same colors basically signify some sort of relationships between individual people. So, for example, you see these people, they should really make value for this manager right here. But, you know, he and that guy, Blue up there, they went together to the same school, you know? So when he really needs something, suddenly it's like, sorry, manager, I need to help you, you know, and I'm really busy. And you know, this will happen once, twice, and the larger and more complex the organization is, the more this is bound to happen. And then, of course, this doesn't work. You know, a very smart guy's design doesn't work because it didn't even think about people who are pretty much unpredictable. This is what we are. We are very unpredictable. And if we are forced by situational forces into a specific kind of behavior or attitude, the rigid designs of organizations simply are not enough. And this is also why we are all here interested in self-organization, in Scrum, in basically designing a common purpose, something that doesn't have to be designed like this and depending on it, something that will activate us from the inside. Because then the dependency on the structure is lowered. So this is the reality of organizations. Okay, so now we are getting into a little bit psychological topics. Membership and organizing topic. These are actually like terminus technicus, something that really has a specific meaning. And before I get into this, I would like to take maybe a minute or two to talk about context. I would just assume, to not really force you into activity, that each of us understands what a context is. For example, a context can be that right now I am in Nepal. Another context for me is I am speaker at a conference. Another context is I had to fly here. Another context is the planet is round, you know, and there can be many contexts that actually create together something like a mosaic, like the reality that we each perceive, right? If I grew up in a family that would tell me that the earth is flat and that I don't know any other different things that I was told, my perception of reality would be different. I would be working under different contexts. For example, if I work for a good company, I get good salary and I have good teammates, I work in the context that I'm happy to go to the work because I have good teammates and I will be rewarded appropriately. Another person in a different company, maybe a competitive one, will have poor salary and poor team members. And that person will be working under different contexts, right? Still with me? Okay. So you can see that two people may be working the same position, or both of them are QA, okay? But their reality they can see and experience every day is completely different. So now that we have established this, let's continue. You still remember the metronomes, right? So if these would be individual people or even parts of organization, then this platform below it, this is actually what allowed for the synchronization, right? The movement of the individual metronomes sent vibrations to the platform that is, you know, like we could say agile, because it's moving, it's not fixed. And after a while, they all synchronized. What many companies lack, not only in their thinking, but also in their organizational structure, is such a platform. It can be a way of thinking, it can be a way of working, but if we are able to create the platform, then, of course, the people, the teams will synchronize under some certain common purpose. And we will talk more about what is the platform in just a couple minutes. So, do you know Stanford Experiment? And now I would like to call for action. Who has heard of Stanford Experiment? Please raise your hand. Okay, couple hands. So I will just quickly summarize this. There was also, I think, a Hollywood movie or some kind of movie made about it, but it puts the whole experiment in a very negative way. And if you go online and you will see for it, it will be listed under the most horrible psychological experiments ever, terror, blah, blah, blah. It's not really like that. It was a powerful experiment for sure. So the main statement and the hypothesis of such an experiment was that situational forces affect our behavior, which basically means that under different circumstances, I will act differently. And the question was, can the situational forces be so powerful that they will overcome my own integrity and my own personality? And the answer was yes. So this concept was basically first introduced by Sigmund Freud on a very basic level in the very beginnings of psychology, where he proposed that there are some invisible forces, subconscious or elsewhere, that can make us do things that are quite terrible sometimes, and that we should discover these forces to not be defenseless. Then it was taken by Carl Gustav Jung, and finally also Philip Zimbardo, who actually made the experiment in 1973. Now quickly, what was the experiment about? Philip took 24 young men who were absolutely psychologically stable. They had clean crime background. They were from prestigious universities. They were basically, you know, for the Western civilization, this would be the future gold generation, the representation of what a young man should be, okay? No flaw, no crime record, nothing. They randomly separated them into two groups. First of the groups were wardens, the people that guard in the prison, the prison guards. The other half, well, the prisoners. Now, the prisoners were they knew that they will be this role, but basically what happened is that they were, for example, having a dinner with their family, and suddenly the police came, and they just, you know, handcuffed him, dragged him into the police car, they took him to the police station, they filed a report, and then they took these 12 people. So it was a shock, right? You are having a dinner and suddenly police comes and basically arrests you. And you are like, oh, actually this might be experiment, but what's going on? And this really takes you out of your normal comfort. And then they took these 12 people into the basement of Stanford Psychological University, or the Department of Psychology in Stanford University, where there was an improvised prison. It was improvised, but it was very real-alike. It really was prison for all means. And now, why it is told that this experiment is terrible is because it had to be shut down after 3 or 4 weeks. Because the hypothesis proved too real. The background of the experiment was that there was a lot of warden on prisoners' violence in these decades in the United States. And basically, Zimbardo proposed this experiment to see if wardens are actually animals and very inhuman, or if there is something else happening. So you first have these 24 perfectly pure individuals who never committed anything seriously bad or, something wrong. And in 3 weeks, they had to stop the experiment because the wardens started to literally beat the prisoners. They all knew they are in an experiment. The wardens knew the prisoners are not prisoners. They are another students. The students knew the wardens are not wardens. They are just students. Everybody knew it's an experiment. But they started acting to each other like they really were wardens and prisoners. So they had to cut it because there was physical violence. I think this is a very powerful experiment, and for many people who, tend to think of it as brutal, they just don't really, I think, appreciate the information value that we get out of this experiment. So with all that we have said right now, the ultimate question is this: how to guide living systems affected by such situational forces? Because when you are in your work, at your work, when you are in your company, there are many situational forces that, act upon you. The typical example would be like, and we are going back to the systems, you would have a team, they would have a manager, the team doesn't deliver, the company replaces the manager, then they replace the manager again and again, then they replace 2 team members, still nothing changes. This is because of the membership. So what Zimbardo called it is membership. He basically devised or designed a concept, or named the concept, that if you are in a system, a social system, affected by situational forces, you will take up the role. You see? The students took up the role of the warden. The students took up the role of the prisoner. And they acted like it. So imagine that you have a company that's successful for 10, 15 years, whatever. It is strict, maybe. Maybe it is highly hierarchical, or maybe it's not. But if a new person comes, he will be forced by the situational forces to assume a role. If he doesn't assume the role, the system will slowly put the person away. So how can we basically help this whole thing? How can we guide the humans and the social systems in the way that's actually beneficial when we know that there are so many forces at play? This is basically a diagram that will show you how it happens. Like, this is still like a description of reality. So up there we have communication. Communication is nothing but system interpretation. Let's imagine that I finish my talk. We are all here a social system. You are smaller systems designed like one group, another. And when we finish, you will maybe start talking about my talk for a while. What will be that? That will be that the system, systems, are interpreting what you just saw, right? So it's system interpretation. And it happens, like I am a new guy who joins you guys here in your team, and when you go for coffee, it's like, hey, that guy, I mean, he's really weird, like, and he's white, and I don't know, man. So you see, this will be the system interpretation, and everybody will somehow participate. In a classroom, there can be the silent kid, the silent child that doesn't speak much. But even being silent is a form of communication, and he established his role as being a silent kid, as well as there will be a bully, a joker, and so on. So this is the communication, and we cannot not communicate. Well, we always communicate by our movement, by our speech. So this communication basically establishes the membership, right? Because the wardens actually talked somehow to the prisoners, and if the wardens didn't talk to the prisoners in such a way, it would be much harder to get into the role. So through the communication, we establish and we assume a membership inside of the social system. We take up the role. When we take up the role, we start to behave in such a way, right? We are back to the people in the experiment that really got, maybe after 3 days, 4 days, they assumed the roles. And then they started like, just, hey, faster man, And then slightly slower, as we turned around, it got to beating. So behavior, and the behavior is, again, reinforcing the organizing topic. And this is where the magic happens. So the organizing topic is the platform. The organizing topic is the platform, and as I spoke about the context, it's something, some description of reality that we are aware of, right? We are in a room. That's a context. We can all agree about that. But there will be maybe some meta context. Meta, like behind, like hidden context. Like, why are we in this room? What is the why, or what is behind the context that we can clearly describe? So for example, you are all part of a great delivery team. Well, that is a context, but what is the meta context of the statement that we are all a part of a great delivery team? Right? What made it happen that we are a part of a great delivery team? So the membership, the organizing topic is the platform that makes the people synchronize, and the organizing topic is the context that is the closest to the people. So, for example, for some companies in the United States, it's enough if we repeat, it's great to have you here, it's great to have you here, it's great to have you here. And the people will be hypnotized into understanding that it's great to have you here, and I'm happy. But in Agile, this doesn't work, not much, not in the self-organized teams. Self-organized teams usually need, self-aware people, people who know why they are here, people who want to work this way, people who can assume responsibility. And without responsibility, you don't have self-organization. So the platform that made it synchronize was the organizing topic. For example, it would be, guys, you now start as a new self-organized team that has to deliver this specific value. You have stated your own mission in the last workshop. You are aware of these things, of these situational, settings, all the contexts. And then the team will assume, basically the organizing topic that we are here to deliver the value to the client. While before it might have been, we are here to do the job as much as I can, as well as I can, earn my salary and do something else. I don't know. But now, this context, the old organizing topic, we are a hierarchical company. Everybody listens to managers. These are all organizing topics that make the systems move. If we can replace this organizing topic with another one that is suitable for what we want to do, then the organizing topic will create new form of communication. It's like every time I set up a new self-organizing team, the people simply talk about what the hell is going on. So do you get it? How are we gonna do it? Are we going to do that? Can we still speak with those people? Can I now ignore my manager? Do I have a manager? New communication happens, completely new. Things that the people would never say before. And because they talk about it, and they have a Scrum Master which facilitates this, so he accelerates it, they assume the new membership. They are no longer a line specialist under someone. They are suddenly a part of a self-organized team responsible for delivering the value. They are a subject matter expert that has been specifically picked or invited to join this team. And that's a new role. And this new membership for each of these individuals will again form their behavior. Maybe the person that would never speak up now feels empowered and will simply say, hey guys, we are totally going wrong way with the architecture design. You're like, hey, this guy, he speaks. And you see, it will start changing itself. This was quite a heavy topic. Do you understand what I was talking? Is there more clarification necessary? Okay, nobody is really, so I can continue, okay? I really don't want to mess you up, so. All right, so this was very important. Now, we are getting to the sort of practical, even more practical part, I would say. I was told that the presentation will be available upon request after the conference, so you can afterwards probably see it again. And principles of the living systems. So all that I will be saying now has been proved in biology or microbiology or physics. It all actually really happens. And because we are also living systems, even though sometimes the corporations forget, we also adhere to these principles. So we have 3 that I want to share with you today. There are more, but 3 would be enough for now. So autopoiesis, a word that comes from Greek, and it actually means self-organization. Autopoietic would mean self-organizing. So what you are looking at, the little pretty yellow sun in there, would be a living system. Let's say that it's a human, okay? And basically there can be 3 things that would happen to the system, to the human. These lines are representing a possible impact of an external stimulus, okay? Something, it can be sound, it can be a word, or it can be a letter, it can be that I see something, you know? It can be peer pressure. It can be something that simply, me as a human being here, suddenly it hits me, right? It's some sort of an impact on myself. So what can I do with these stimuli? I will put this here so you can also read. We can basically do 3 things. Either we can accept the stimulus. So we basically let it in. We let it affect us. For example, it doesn't have to be necessary that you follow orders. Does it still? I did something bad, I think. Yeah. Is it working? Help? Oh, wait. Oh, okay. I think it's fine. It just, yeah, this was not necessary. So, hopefully, yeah. So, for example, if you accept something, I don't know, you are a small child, you are playing, your mother calls, come for the dinner. Yeah, okay. So not only you heard the input, right? So your system, your biological system accepted the stimulus, acceptance, it went right in. But you also even acted accordingly. So that's pure acceptance. I will not go into this conscious, subconscious differentiation today because that would take up another 10 minutes and we will not have them. But I will just put one example in the deflection. Then we have modification. So for example, I will be talking with some of you and suddenly I will hear you say a Czech word. I'm a Czech person from Czech Republic. Our language is Czech. So maybe somebody will say something Czech. I'm like, did you say? No, 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 I said, I don't know, namaste. And that would be the modification, probably subconscious, right? So I heard something, my bio-mental system heard something, and it modified the input. I didn't even realize it was like, what did you say? Was it possible you said this? No, I said something, okay. So the system modified it. Again, it can be conscious or subconscious. Subconscious modification often happens when you are indoctrinated or when you are under a lot of stress, PTSD, for example, then you modify a lot of inputs. You know, something slams the car door and you think that you are in Vietnam again. I'm not making fun of it. This is really how this works. Then the deflection. Again, let's say that you are in school, back in school or back in university or high school, whatever, and you are writing and the teacher suddenly speaks, right? But you don't even hear him. You are focused on writing. And then your classmate was like, hey, man, what's up? I'm like, what? Well, he asked you a question. You didn't mean to ignore the teacher, but your system, because your attention was elsewhere, simply deflected the input, right? Unconsciously. So this is just how to get a little bit of idea. So did you guys have enough time to read these things on the right? Okay. Are there right now any questions to this principle? Something that would stop you from going further? Okay. Picture and we go on. Okay. The next one is operational closure or closeness. So what we are looking at are, again, living systems, okay? The yellow one would be the person A, this would be the person B. Now, every single second in our life, we actually reach into our inner resources and memories. What does it mean, operational closure? Operational closure is this. A system is operationally closed when its operators, me, are not instructed by the environment, determined by own nature and basically what it wants to do. So we can be affected, right? Like in the prison experiment, we can be somehow affected. But not all the people that were wardens were beating someone. You know, somewhere not. So it proves that every human being is operationally closed It's up to us and our nature how we react to things that happen to us. So, what does it say? Each system will act based on its current form and previous forms and experiences. So this is the present form up there, okay? This is the version of the human being or of the living system that is maybe, I don't know, 3 days old or 1 second old. It doesn't matter. And this is even older version, okay? And the same goes here. So every time I see someone, for example, I saw Prakash yesterday for the first time in reality, okay? So when I saw him, and he didn't have the beard he has on LinkedIn, so that was very confusing for me, like seriously. And so what did my system do? A little bit subconsciously. It sent a question, a query to its previous version, like, hey, have you ever seen this person? And I was still like, who is this? And so it was like, and maybe sometime even earlier on, is it someone maybe you saw online? So I asked the previous version from maybe, a couple of minutes ago, and then another older version. This happens automatically, of course. And finally, I got the input, oh, it's actually Prakash, but without beard. And the proper information has been sent up, back to my consciousness, right? Or awareness. Now, why do I have 2 lines of them? Because every single time you interact with someone, and it can be human-human or social system, but human-human is the best example to put it simply, this happens automatically. So every time I see a human face or a human being, it goes, oh, who is this? Oh, it's Cliff. Oh, I went to Garden of Dreams yesterday with Cliff. And I'm sending like basically questions to my memory and to my complex to take up the information. Now imagine that this is an employee, this is a manager in a very rough, tough relationship. The manager is, like very dominant. Every time this person sees the manager, this subconscious process happens. It takes up our mental energy. That's important. We have some mental capacity. And these processes, of course, take some of the capacity. Now imagine that when I ask the questions, who is it? Oh, it's the manager. What do I know about the manager? That he's pretty rough and he doesn't, tolerate any mistakes and he is very dominant. And I get the information back up. In the blink of an eye, before I have to like say, oh, good day, yes, yes. In the millisecond, I have to get this information from my system and I have to act accordingly. So maybe show that I am like, subordinate to him or something. And imagine how much it drains basically our mental capacity and our ability to operate in a social system. So if you have the Scrum team, you know that it's a flat structure, right? The product owner, the Scrum Master, it's a flat structure. Nobody is above anyone. So it basically helps us from the psychological point of view be faster, be more at ease. I don't have to calculate how I need to act towards this person when I see him. I don't have to create subconscious processes to actually think about it. It's just not necessary. So this is how having a partner-like structure in the company or in the team or between the teams actually help us achieve greater efficiency and be even more relaxed. So when 2 living systems meet, they evaluate and identify the other system based on the previous experiences. This is what I was talking about pretty much. And yeah, that's all that I was saying already. So let's get to the third. There is a little bit less text, but I like this picture actually. Come on. Yes. So, the theory of dissipative structures. Dissipation, right? Something dissipates. It vaporizes pretty much. So I think this was also 70s or 80s. I'm not really sure. And this was actually a physics experiment that was awarded by the Nobel Prize, right? So it's quite a significant experiment. So what did the guys mean? They basically wanted to see how a closed system would react to different working with energy, right? What would happen? So because they didn't experiment on a human being, but it was a physics experiment, they had a basically container with gas. Because gas is entropy, right? It's basically chaos until you somehow start to shape it. So I will go with you through this right now, and I will explain how the experiment went. And I want you, while listening to me, to think in the back of your mind how it relates to humans and teams, okay? Think about it as a team. So at the beginning, they had chaos, entropy. That's where the start is, just a bottle with gas. What was happening? Well, they were like, hey guys, so we want to see what happens. So let's add some energy. So in the experiment, they added heat, right? Because gas usually reacts to some form of heat. So they added heat. And what started to happen is that the individual atoms started forming very simple molecular structures, right? Now see the analogy to the team. I add in some sort of energy, I observe the energy, some basic structures start to appear maybe. So this was the first part. And then they were like, okay, so what's gonna happen next? So let's add more energy. So they added more heat. And suddenly it was not just structures, but complex structures started to appear. More complicated molecules reacting with each other already. And then they were like, okay, so this is pretty satisfactory. So let's add more energy and see what happens. So they added more energy and nothing happened. What happened? How is it possible? Well, the system basically reached its full potential of complexity. The system, as it was composed from the elements, from the atoms, or in the case of team, of the people in their current state, being this mature and this experienced and this willing to cooperate, they just couldn't get higher than this potential. Not at this point, not in this combination. So they were like, well, we still have to see what's happening next. So they added even more energy. And now we are getting to the very reverse. The complex structures, the most delicate but complex structures, started to disappear. The heat was already too much for the molecular structures to actually stay together under the conditions that they were basically intended for. They added even more energy, and even the primitive structures started to disappear because the system was just too overheated. So you can see that we can apply too much energy to a team. Like when I was working for an American corporation, the manager would go and he would basically tell me, I literally counted it. In the first introductory meeting, when there was the whole team, he told me 29 times in 60 minutes, in a different way, it's good to have you here. It was different, like, it's nice to have you on the team. Jan, it's great you're here. Jan, we're very glad we hired you. You will be a great addition, Jan. 29 times in 60 minutes, that's once every 2 minutes. You know, even if I believed him in the first time, which I was like unsure, now I was pretty clear what's going on. So you can really, you can overstimulate the system. As a Scrum Master, you can go to a certain length that you will be, you know, like motivating the team, helping them, opening the doors and helping them to find their own solutions. But at a certain point, this will no longer be efficient. At a certain point, you either have to let go, or maybe the situation becomes so critical that you actually have to take, you know, action because you are the process owner afterwards in the Scrum. Or if we can apply this to the organization design or changing the structure of the whole bank, for example, you need to be very careful, you know? Imagine that you're a coach who's hired to help redesign the structure of a 500 people, 5,000 people company. This is your system. The company is your system, your bottle with the gas. And you must very carefully think about what energy, how much, and when you apply it. And you must observe the reaction. So again, the feedback loops that the colleagues talked about before. And eventually, after they added too much energy, it fell back to entropy, and it was just a bottle with gas again. And they got Nobel Prize for this. I think we are getting to the end. Yes, that's very good because the time is running out also. I might be 1 minute late, maybe. Thank you. So conclusion, I have a couple points that I would like you to remember apart from what we talked about, very quickly summarized. So let's go one by one together and then we will say goodbye. So organizations are hybrid systems. This is what I said in my annotation of the speech. What we saw was basically an org chart, an idea of how an organization should work, and then the human layer. And put together, it's not a living system, really. It's not an inorganic system, machine. It's a hybrid system. So it's a hybrid system composed of machines and living systems, humans, teams, and their relationships. Every living system decides for itself how they are going to react to something. Here I want to insert a very short but quite brutal example. So I apologize for the topic itself, but it illustrates the point very well. In the Second World War in Europe, there existed concentration camps, like elimination camps. And we have documented examples when the guard would tell the prisoner, right now, you will either eat your excrement right here, or I will shoot you through your head. It's terrible, but this is not the point here. It's just that it's really critical, brutal situation, life or death. And we have documented names and dates of people who chose to eat the excrement and of people who chose to get shot. And then your colleagues tell you, I really cannot like leave this company because, and you're like, well, maybe. So you see, every system can really decide under even like critical situation for itself. You can like manipulate it a little bit by creating organizing topic and communication, but it's up to them. Context creates the mosaic of our perceived lives, of our reality. So how I understand it, what context I work under. If you are Scrum Master, product owner, for example, as a product owner, you can introduce your client and your team to contextual understanding of what the thing is supposed to do. Not only that the ROI will be 50% or you fired or that we are making the best app ever, but more context. So try to think about contextual understanding and deliver it to the people so then you can synchronize them. Remember, organizing topic is another context, which is, I think, this point. Oh, meta contexts are hidden contexts, so some of them that are often not communicated. For example, Mr. Manager, why do you need the report every single Wednesday? Because I want to keep control. Well, the meta context would be that he already failed twice, and he really feels like micromanaging, or he will get fired, and that would be the meta context. So when you work with your teams, meta contexts are very important. It should be like known to you that they are there. And the last organizing topic that I talked about, the platform that synchronized all the elements, is another meta context. It's something that is there. It's something that can be named and brought down to the people. So it's a meta context with enough power to guide the system. For example, we are a company that delivers the value to the customers, and then we care about ourselves. And if we have people that will be moved by this, it is a good organizing topic. If not, we have to choose another one. And with this, I would like to thank you, and may all the good come your way. Thank you for your attention.